This class is concerned with business strategy, and more specifically it introduces the ideas behind business strategy. To start, strategy is first of all determining the long-term goals of the business, and secondly the adoption of courses of action that enable the attainment of the goals. So strategy is concerned with setting the long-term goals of the business, what the long-term plans of the business are, and then adopting courses of action that enable the attainment of the goals, perhaps investing in machinery or retraining workers or moving location, whatever it is, adopting some course of action to enable the attainment of the goals. Management need to consider the company's financial performance. It needs to know how well the business is doing and what resources are available to implement a strategy. It also needs to know whether the strategy needs to be significantly different to that which is being pursued at the moment. Perhaps the current strategy is optimal. Usually, however, it's the case that a plan needs to stretch into the future and needs to anticipate changes in the future, so there is need for a long-term strategy to be put in place. But in order to implement it, certainly the company will need financial resources, and it needs to look at the current financial performance of the business to assess all of that. And secondly, it's necessary to evaluate the long-term competitive position of the business and see if the long-term competitive position can be improved, perhaps by introducing new products or by innovating the existing product or by innovating the way the product is made or delivered. So some sort of innovative process, perhaps looking at the long-term competitive position of the business. It could also include, of course, looking at competitors, the number of competitors, the likely future number of competitors, the effectiveness of the competitors, the image of the product in the market, and so on. So there are many aspects to this. Let's just list a couple of them. First of all, it may be an issue of growing the business. Just as simple as that, trying to make the business bigger so it has a bigger presence in the market. How well is it meeting customer demands, customer needs? How well is it meeting those? What's the feedback? What's the reputation of the business and the product in the market? How does it compete successfully within the marketplace? What are its prices and how is it viewed? What's its image in the marketplace? And what can be done to improve the image in the marketplace? And presumably there is always room or scope for improvement. Look at the overall organization and its performance. Is it too bureaucratic? Does it need streamlining? Has it got the right structure? Has it got the right chain of command, to use a military analogy? Is it controlled effectively? What is the organization's performance? Does it have core competencies? Can it develop more core competencies? Should it have specialist investment made for it? What's the layout of the plant? Where is the business located? There are many issues to consider here. So look critically at the organization performance. Now the company strategy, well, in devising strategy, management may take the following into account. First of all, the need to monitor improved sales and market share. It's important for management to know what its sales are and what they're likely to be, look at its market share. Is it stable? Is it increasing, or is it falling? It needs to monitor. It needs information. It needs feedback before decisions can be made, and the information should be accurate. The need to cope with challenging market conditions and trading environments. It may be wise to have a strategy which suggests that the future will be difficult, because at least the business is tuning up to quite an aggressive market position in the future. It's anticipating problems, and it's putting resources and planning to meet those challenges into place. So it's meeting the challenges, even though it's anticipating them. So it needs to cope with a challenging market condition and trading environment. And perhaps at the moment it's not that challenging and not difficult. But who's to say in 3, 5, 10 years' time? It must have market entry and strategy and exit strategies. It must know how to enter the market. If the market is expanding, and perhaps it's expanding overseas in another country, how does it enter that market? What's its strategy to get a foothold in the market? Or what's its strategy to increase its market share in the domestic market? And if things go wrong, how does it get out? What's its exit strategy? How does it deal with very adverse market conditions, so adverse it needs to disinvest, it needs to retreat from the market? What are its exit strategies? It needs to deal with external threats and opportunities in changing domestic and emerging markets. It's almost always the case that there are external threats to a business. They can come from a variety of sources. It can come from new competitors or existing competitors who are introducing new lines. It could come from changes in government regulations. It can come from changing employment laws. It can come from a whole variety of areas. So what are the threats? And what strategies can be put into place if the threats arise? So the business is not caught without a plan. It is caught with a plan, and it can cope with that. And what are the opportunities? We're talking here as if everything is negative, but there may be opportunities in the future. But the business needs to be positioned in such a way as to be able to capitalize on the opportunities. It needs to be able to deal with the opportunities and profit from them. It needs to look at competitive weaknesses. It could be the product is getting old, or it's out of date, or it needs rebranding. It needs a facelift. It could be that it's too costly because the business itself is a high-cost business. Perhaps more effective cost control within the business is required to make it competitive. It's a variety of situations, but the company's strategy should allow for these, and it should take them into account. Deal with the internal environment. Deal with the workers. Make sure they're trained and motivated. Make sure that they are keen to be involved in the business. Deal with management in the same way, so that all lines of management are committed to the same set of objectives. They believe in the objectives and they want to achieve those objectives. So deal with the internal environment. Deal with the layout of the business. Deal with the physical layout. Deal with the organizational chart. Deal with all the issues in terms of a smooth running of the business. And try to improve the company's market share and competitiveness. deal with that now. Deal with the current situation and try to improve the current situation, because the current situation is what's going to last for some time as the new strategy is being phased in. So it's important for the business to have a good current strategy that applies now, make changes now to improve the performance, and they will also help to finance the future development and the future direction of the business. Next, let's look at making and executing the process, making and executing the strategy. Well, the first is phase one, develop a strategic vision. Try to imagine where the business can be in 5 or 10 years' time. That's the vision. Make sure it's realistic. Make sure it's rooted in what can be done. It's a practical, but at the same time it's a vision. It's not a fantasy. So develop a strategic vision. Phase two, set the objectives to achieve that vision. How will the vision be achieved? And develop a strategy to achieve the vision. So it's got the objectives, it knows what it needs to do. Then develop a strategy to achieve that vision. How will the objectives be achieved? And then implement the strategy. Phase 4. Implement it. Make sure it can be done. And it will be done. If it's not going to be implemented, the whole thing is a waste of time. Phase 5. Monitor the developments. Evaluating performance, making corrective adjustments. So it's implementing the strategy and all the time looking at the developments, looking at what happens and evaluating the performance, checking the performance and making any adjustments that are required. If need be, revise the strategy. Review actual performance, new opportunities and new ideas. It may be that the strategy needs to be changed. New information has come to light. The market is moving in a different direction. The strategy needs to be changed. If that's the case, do so. But do so fast, so as not to waste resources committed to an obsolete strategy. So make changes, review the actual performance of the business, and look for new opportunities all the time and new ideas. And try to incorporate latest standard practices, latest best practices into the business. So revise the strategy, go back to the strategic vision and update the strategic vision and come round again. You've gone back to phase 1, go to phase 2, phase 3 and so on until we get back to the overall revised strategy if need be. And of course the revision of the strategy can be anywhere. It could be not necessarily just changing the strategic vision, that could be still in place. It could be changing the objectives slightly or developing a strategy to achieve the vision, so changing the strategy perhaps. Maybe that's what's required to be changed. So in fact the jump back, it's not necessarily a complete loop. It may be that the strategy originally designed was okay, it was good, but the strategy now needs to be revised, needs to be changed. New components need to be incorporated because of changes in technology, changes in work practices, the development of new core competencies or whatever. But overall, what we've got to here is we've got a scheme which moves us from the current position into some desired future position based on strategic vision and setting objectives, developing a strategy to achieve the vision, ticking off the objectives, implementing the strategy, making sure that it can be done, and then monitoring to make sure that everything is going according to plan, and revising if need be. Go back if changes need to be made, do them speedily, go back, make the changes, and see if a whole loop needs to be done again, or perhaps it's just a question of changing the implementation of the strategy. Maybe that's all that's required. Maybe everything's okay up to phase 4. Phase 4 has gone wrong. Change phase 4, go to phase 5 and revise it again and see if that's working. So this is our introduction to business strategy. This is a starting point, and that sort of introduces the basic idea. So that's it for this session. So let's just leave it at that and say thank you for watching.